Welcome to Paul's Toolbox. Today I'm going to cover installing crown molding on your cabinets. And I'm putting a kitchen together right now where I'm installing crown molding in a couple of different ways, and I want to explain how this is done. If you're not familiar with cutting crown molding, you want to check out my other video. It's called How to Cut Crown Molding the Easy Way. But let me show you why I'm addressing this in different ways right now. I'm going to use this cabinet as an example. Right here you have a stile that hangs over the panel on the side. This is the side of the cabinet. Well, if you don't do something to compensate for that stile right here, this overhang, you're going to have a gap right there when you put your crown molding around. So some people will use a piece of scribe molding and they'll set it right up against the top of the cabinet and then run their crown on that to fill this void up. Sometimes the scribe molding will not match this exactly. So when you put the crown molding across there, you may have a small gap on the side of there. What I choose to do is rip it out of a filler. So I'll take my filler and rip strips. If it's a 1/4 inch, I'll get exactly a 1/4 inch. If it's 5/16 of an inch, that's what I'm going to rip these pieces at. And sometimes you might have to take 1 or 2 pieces and rip it as test pieces to make sure it fits the cabinet right. And once you have it exactly the same thickness as this, you have a perfect edge around there, then you can put your crown molding on. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get started on it. The way I'm doing this kitchen is with fillers. I take my 3-inch filler and I'll rip 1/4 inch strips out of it. That way I can cut them to length and put them right here, and then my crown molding will sit right on that, and I have a nice flat edge. It looks clean. Now to get my measurements, all I do is measure from one point to another, of course. This is an inside cut. This is an outside cut. So let's go to the saw and see. It sits on the wall like this. Always look at the profile. The fancy stuff is at the bottom of crown. The regular cove is going to be at the top, okay? So this is how that crown will sit on the wall. When I cut crown, I mark it right on the top, and then I put the line down the back side right here. That way I can see where my blade goes. We're going to take right here and do an inside cut. I don't need to mark anything for my first cut. I'm just going to cut this outside part off right here. So I set it upside down. Remember, safety first. Wear some type of glasses to keep anything from hitting your eyes. I make sure my saw is straight on 0. I'm setting my saw at 45 degrees because it takes 2 45-degree cuts to make a 90-degree angle. Now I'm cutting into my length of wood right here, as you can see. If I'm cutting into it, that means that this is an inside cut. If I'm cutting away from my length of board that I'm using, then it's an outside cut. Right here, you can see the long point is going to be at the bottom. That means it's an inside cut. And I'm cutting into the piece of wood that I'm using. Now all I need to do is take my tape, put it on the very end, and measure over 12 inches. Remember, I'm taking my mark right here, and I'm going to continue it on the back side right here. That way I know exactly where my mark is. You see my line right there? That way you know you're exact. So I'll set it here, and I'll get a couple of tacks in it, just to hold it in place where I want it. Set this in place and get it exactly where I want it and tack it in. My next measurement is 38 15/16 from outside to outside, 2 outside corners. One thing I want to point out, it's a lot easier to cut crown if you have crown stops. Here are my crown stops. You just drill a hole in the side of your saw. A lot of saws already have a hole made to accommodate that. You take a nut and bolt, or if it's made to accommodate it, it'll already have a thread. So this kit comes with the wing nuts and all that. So you'll screw it onto the side of your saw, and this will slide back and forth and get you in the exact position. So what you'll do, you set your crown molding up, make sure that this is totally flat and this is totally flat. If the bottom's totally flat and this is totally flat, you'll have a straight cut every time. These will line up with each other. That's the great thing about having these crown stops. You don't usually see these crown stops in your local stores, but you can go on Amazon.com and find anything. Just look up crown stops. They have them made from Hitachi, DeWalt, Rigid, all types of different places. I think the most popular one's DeWalt, but it fits universally. Okay, I'm going to take this right now and make an outside cut with it. So we will flip this over, cutting away from a piece of wood at a 45-degree angle. Let's get this cut. Forgot my glasses. When you're cutting crown, make sure you have a good blade with sharp teeth. If it's dull, you're going to get frayed edges. You want a nice clean cut. You start seeing the side of this burning, or if it's taking longer to get through, then you need a new blade. Let me show you a great tool for any type of construction. I keep it on my tool belt all the time. You'll see me in different videos with this because I use it for popping lines. It's fantastic for that, but it's also great for something like this. This is called a V-line clamp. It can clamp on the end of this wood, and I can hook my blade to the end of this and just get my measurement. It's made for plywood and doing stuff like that, but I can clamp it on crown, and it does the same thing. You see how this clamp works? It's like a potato chip clip, but it works much better. It's great for a lot of things. But I can take this and set it right on the edge. Now I can hook my blade and get a measurement from here by myself with long lengths. I have 38 and 15/16, and I can make my mark. So much easier than trying to fight with this and pulling an inch. And I take this, put it back on my belt clip. It's out of the way. Notice I don't just run that saw right through it because you'll mess the wood up and you really get frays. Even with a sharp blade, you want to just walk it right through. Let's test it out. Okay, we're ready to put it up. I'm going to take glue and put it on my corner. Glue this joint. Set it right on there. I don't shoot it into the other crown yet. I'm just going to tack it in place and get it just right. Once I have a tack in here, and it's holding right, then I will shoot into the corners. Now I can make sure everything is right. And using a pin nailer, shooting it into this end grain right here from one piece of crown to another doesn't hold very much. It'll hold it enough for that glue to dry, and that's all you want. When you shoot it into the face right here, it bites really well because you're not shooting in the end grain because it's a tiny, tiny nail. Now, once I have that lined up, and it's tacked into each other, then I can line this up. I'll put one tack over here to where I can still move it a little bit to make my adjustments. I eyeball it. I know I'm close. I can still make adjustments from there. If I have glazing on a cabinet, I'll try to shoot right into that glazing so it makes it less obvious too. When it's all said and done and it looks tight, then you can hard nail it. Shoot your nails all along in the track. Now I'm going to trim out the top of this cabinet. So I'll get my measurements. 6. 5/8. Here's a helpful tip. Whenever you cut dark wood, you see that inside's real light, it's very obvious. If you put two pieces up and a little bit of that showing, it's going to really stick out like a sore thumb. So take your touch-up marker and mark out a line right on the outside of it. So when it does touch, you won't see it. It really makes it a lot less obvious. If you don't have a marker to match it and you're using dark wood, get a Sharpie. You can get a brown Sharpie to match this, or even a black Sharpie will do it. If you have a dark line in there, it's much less obvious than a white line on that stain. All right, let's put it up. On this cabinet, I did a bump out and a bump up. So I'll put skins on the side there. I don't have to worry about the side. Take my first piece. Well, that's all for now. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next project.